That works fine.
Okay. Thank you, Michael, and hello, everybody. I'm actually thrilled to be here, and isn't it always fun getting the technology going at the beginning? So I want to talk to you today about exercising your leadership gift. For 20 years, I've been studying some breakthrough research about how personal responsibility works in our minds. And I ran into this research because I was trying to understand self-organizing in the early 90s in order to teach software project leaders how to build teams. So this was about 10 years before the formalization of Agile. And I was working in similar arenas, but I was not part of the patterns conferences because I didn't have an engineering background. I had an organizational science background. And so I want to share with you what we've learned. I think it's very exciting stuff, and it's held my interest for a very long time. And notice that my Twitter ID does not have a Y on the end, so there wasn't enough characters, so my Twitter ID is Christopher, A-V-E-R, altogether. And I also want you to know that you can download this presentation right now, although there's no need to go and get it right now, but from ChristopherAvery.com, just click on the Resources tab at the bottom of the page, and on that Resources page you'll see a link to the presentation archive. And so it's there for you when you are ready for it. So yesterday, an Agile coach wrote me and told me that he had been using the leadership gift materials for quite some time with clients. And I wrote him back and said, thank you, and please tell me what you're doing and what the result is, because I'm always interested in knowing. And so he wrote back and he said, Agile practices efficiently expose problems. The leadership gift gives people tools to address problems. And I think that that states really well what I would like you to take away from today in terms of your starting to exercise your own leadership gift. I won't delve deeply into this idea, but the idea is that accountability as we practice it in management is not the same thing as personal responsibility. So just because you may be held to account for something doesn't mean that you actually assume total responsibility for that. In fact, accountability means account giving, means the ability to give an account. So we can account for failure in many ways and get let off the hook. I didn't know, it's not my fault, he did it, this environment's too tough, you know, all sorts of ways that we can account for not getting something done. But it's not the same as taking ownership or taking responsibility. So I've been fascinated with this notion for decades, really, that what is personal responsibility? How does it work in our minds? Is it simply a moral imperative? Is it something you should do, or is there more to it? And I was introduced to a research project that started in 1987, excuse me, and this is 1991 that I was introduced to it. And it turns out that this research project was doing very meticulous participant observation research, just the same way Virginia Satir took notes with her clients, the same way Freud took notes with his clients, the same way Carl Jung took notes with his clients. This research team was taking very meticulous notes about how you and I and other human beings respond to a problem. And it turns out that there's a pattern in our minds that is shared by all of us. So my belief very strongly is that this is genetic, it's in our DNA, and the difference in how we deal with it is conditioning, but the same basic pattern exists for all of us at every age, every gender, every race, every level of intelligence. And when I say it's how we respond to a problem, I don't mean a juicy, fun engineering or business problem. I mean something that causes upset or anxiety, a whoops, a uh-oh, an oh crap, an oh darn. And it turns out that the first thing you and I do when something goes wrong is our mind tries to hand us an answer which comes from this coping mechanism. So what I'm describing to you is the way our mind copes when things go wrong, when we get a result that's different than the result that we want. And it turns out that no matter how smart you are, how well developed you are, the moment you have some anxiety, your mind hands you an answer where it's easy to find someone else to blame, a culprit. So if I'm working away at my desk and I have an appointment to go to and I reach for that place where I always keep my keys and they're not there, I immediately have a little bit of upset, and I probably say it out loud, who took my keys? They were right there. And at that moment, my mind is trying to help me cope by giving me an out. That if I can identify a culprit, so-and-so's been in my office since I came to work, they took my keys, then it eases my anxiety. It turns out that there's a series of these that we can get stuck on, and none of them allow us the kind of self-organizing freedom and resourcefulness and problem solving that we in the Agile community admire. The humanity in this is that you and I have been taught our whole lives that we should not blame. Here's what we haven't been taught. We haven't been taught that it's hardwired into you as your first response to any problem. And that makes it very human, because I know that when I'm dealing with people and they blame, they're not wrong, they're not bad, they're not unintelligent or stupid for doing that. They're simply responding the way their mind is wired to respond to cope with things. The issue is that we can get stuck on this mindset, this mental position, this state of blame, or if we reject it, and there's a number of reasons that we would reject it, we graduate to another mindset or another mental state, or I sometimes call them just islands. They're islands on our mind, in our mind, that we get trapped on, and we camp out for a while. I have a little palm tree on my island and a little cot and or a hammock, and I hang out there. So let's say that nobody's been in my office since I came to work, and I ask the question right out loud, who took my keys? And so my mind does a quick sort for who could have come in and taken my keys since I came to work, and then I realize nobody's been in my office since I came to work. And my mind comes right back with another answer. So what happens then is I get knocked off the island of blame, and my mind hands me an answer that says something like this: well, no wonder you can't find your keys. When you came in this morning, remember you were talking on your cell phone, your desk phone was ringing, the door was ajar, you were worried that maybe somebody had broken in, but it turns out there was a big storm overnight, and the branch came through the window, and the rain and the wind came in and blew papers everywhere, and the cat came in and made a mess in the potted plant, and certainly anybody in this situation could have lost their keys. So in English, we use the term justify. If you take the IFI off the end, just, it makes it just that I have this problem. It justifies, it makes it like justice that I would have this problem. Certainly anybody in my situation could have this problem. And just like blame, we've been taught our whole lives that we should not blame, or we should not tell stories or make excuses, which is another word for justify. But again, what you haven't been told your whole life is if you're human, it's hardwired into you. It's how we cope with getting a result that's different than the result that we want at that moment. The issue with blame and justify is that for both of those, we're saying that we are at effect and cause is outside of us. So the technical community is really drawn to this model of the leadership gift because it's about logic and cause and effect. And isn't responsibility all about cause and effect? And isn't when things go wrong all about cause and effect? What happened? Why did we get this result that we don't want? So here's the effect. The effect is we have a result we don't want. So I sometimes use the kind of funny language of saying, I am at effect. And the cause is outside of me. The cause is somewhere else. Now, what psychologists have always told us about that is that if you say the answer to why you're not getting what you want is blame or justify, you're really giving your power away because causality is outside of you. And not many of us are good at changing other people or even changing entire situations. So as long as we accept these answers, the truth is we're saying that we're powerless to make any changes, to do anything, to get the kind of result we want. Now this sounds kind of minor, except I will tell you I've been doing culture change work for almost 20 years around this. And I will tell you the number one justify that I see in organization cultures worldwide is the following. that's just the way it is around here. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be. That's management in this company. That's culture in this company. There's nothing you can do about it, so you might as well not even try. So I bet you have heard similar statements hundreds of times. I bet you've even participated in phrasing that same kind of statement many times. And what I want you to hear about that is that we actually tack the premise onto the end. We say, that's the way it is around here. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be. Therefore, there is nothing you can do. So our premise in blame and justifying these mental states is our premise is that we are powerless. Therefore, why try? And that's probably the biggest issue here, is that if we're stuck in these places, we stop trying. It's why personal responsibility by every success guru since Socrates, has said that personal responsibility is the first key to success at any endeavor. And the reason now is clear. It's how easily we get stopped by these mental states when we have impediments or blocks of one kind or another. If for some reason we don't agree to our own justification, and we can do that consciously or unconsciously, or we can do it logically, but if we don't agree to it, we graduate to another place, which I call shame. And in this place, we're just blaming ourselves. So we're beating ourselves up. I'm a dummy. I'm the dolt. I'm the stupid one. When will I never learn? How could I be so stupid? Oh, shoot me. Or we go into self-pity, right? I did that. I'll take the hit. Blame me. And what's interesting is the reason that this is a different color is that it's the first place in this model where we have pseudo-responsibility, or where we have a place that you and I have been taught that if we are blaming ourselves, that we're being responsible. So think about it. When that person stands up at your meeting and says, that was my fault, I did that, blame me, I'll take the hit, first we go, phew, because of single point accountability. If we have one person saying it's their fault, then we have a scapegoat. Then we turn to reward. We say, oh, good boy, he's taking responsibility. And I don't believe that this is responsibility at all, and the reason has to do with the premise that when we're beating ourselves up, there's a premise that we're actually not good enough. There's a premise that I can't learn, that I don't have enough smarts, I don't have enough education, I don't have enough of the right stuff to overcome this challenge or this obstacle. And the truth that I know, that I believe in, is that every human being has unique genius and unique qualities that we can tap into to overcome any challenge, any obstacle in our world. And as long as we're in the mental state of shame, we're not going to tap into those, because our premise is that we're not good enough. Now, there's a lot of conditioning here, and there's a lot of societal conditioning between the sexes in terms of shame. There's religious conditioning. There's a whole lot of other conditioning here, which you and I could go into at length sometime, and I look forward to doing that with you in a workshop or one of my leadership gift programs sometime. But let me just move on to say that when we get off of this temporary mental state that we can get off of, then we land on another area of pseudo-responsibility, false responsibility, which I call obligation. And in this mental state of obligation, we feel trapped in a place of no choice. So here the premise is, I have no choice. I have to do something that I don't want to do. So I call it the mindset of have to, don't want to. Have to, don't want to. And the mindset of have to, don't want to, again, I grew up being told that if I was doing what I was supposed to do, if I was keeping my commitments, if I was keeping my promises, that if I was being good, that I was being responsible. But here's what I know, is that when we operate from a mindset of obligation, our performance is barely adequate to get a pass. And that is that we're only, our motivation in the mindset of obligation is to get out of the situation. Our motivation is to get through it with the least mental engagement that it takes. So if you're wondering if you have some of this obligation, here's some very simple tests. Think about whether or not you have some really stupid meeting you have to go to. Stupid, stultifyingly boring, horrible meeting, have to go, right? Dumb paperwork, have to do it. Kids' ball game or church or community thing, have to go. We say to our buddies, I can't go to happy hour tonight, I have to go to my kid's thing. Have to is part of our language. And then how many of us have to go to our in-laws for holiday? So it turns out the mental state of obligation not only comes along with low performance, no matter how skilled and smart we are, it also comes along with resentment and toxicity. And it turns out that until we actually refuse to feel trapped, that we don't start accessing the part of our mind, the state of our mind, which is personal responsibility. And it's a mental state, which means it's transient. It's a place we get to now and then, and it's subjective. It's different for you and me and everybody around us. So it's transient and subjective, but it's the place in our minds of freedom, choice, and power. It's the place where we feel like we know what to do to move forward against whatever obstacle or challenge. It's the place of freedom. It's the place of feeling free rather than stressed and anxious. And it's the place where we generate choices. There's another state called quit, which is where we try and disengage out of the anxiety from state and obligation. I don't want to go into that right now. I want to quickly get through this and get some Q&A with you. So overall, the issue here is that these are a series of mental states that we tap into every time something goes wrong. And by the way, how many of you have had things go wrong today? How many things today? And what do we have those meetings about all day at work? It's about stuff going wrong. And the issue is no discovery, no learning, no growth actually occurs in the majority of these mental states below this line. It only occurs when you get above the line, which means if we want to be more resourceful, more powerful, if we want to be more at cause instead of at effect, we want to figure out how to get ourselves to the top of this chart more and more frequently. So this line of research has been labeled the responsibility process. And you're probably interested in, if you think you have one of these in your mind and the people around you, then you're probably interested in what to do about it. And what we've learned is that there's 3 keys to responsibility. And I want you to think of these keys as red, green, refactor, or as a daily stand-up meeting, or as your feedback loops that you use for knowing whether or not you're adding value. It's the same empirical kind of plan, do, check, act process. I'm going to start with these three keys with the one at the top, intention. Intention as a key to responsibility means that the other keys don't matter if you don't have an intention to get to the top of that process around every upset in your life, everything that ticks you off, everything that gives you anxiety. What this is a little message that says that if you want to overcome whatever that is that gives you anxiety, you first have to be willing to embrace it and take 100% responsibility for attracting it into your world before you can start to overcome it and find peace from that situation. So intention, however you set commitments in your life, you want to set a commitment, an intention to get to the top of that chart around every upset in your life. The second key is awareness. The awareness key is very straightforward. The more I can be aware of when I'm blaming, when I'm having thoughts of blaming, thoughts of justifying, thoughts of shame, thoughts of obligation, thoughts of quit, or if it actually gets out, if I'm operating from blame and blaming out loud or justifying, the more aware I am of that, the faster I can catch myself. And if I catch myself, I can forgive myself for being human, because you're not wrong for doing it, you're human for doing it. So I can catch myself, and then I can remind myself of my intention, and these 2 keys work together to knock you off the mental state to the next higher mental state. And the third key is confront. And the confront key sounds like a negative word. Confront is actually a very positive and powerful word. It means the ability to face. And it simply acknowledges that humans can be very weak when it comes to facing stuff that gives us anxiety or fears. We can also be very strong. So confront really means the willingness to stand in front of the mirror and look at yourself in the mirror and stand into the anxiety and ask yourself, what is it about this situation that I need to see or learn or get so that I can grow and overcome it? Think of confront being pushing the edges of your comfort zone. And the good news is you can start this in very small ways and incrementally every day with intention, awareness, and confront around small things. You could also take the C of confront and relabel it as courage, that they're very much related. And if you will start applying this in small ways to small upsets and small anxieties, what you'll find is that you will build the muscle, you'll build your intention, awareness, and confront muscle, and you'll build the courage muscle to face larger and larger and larger things and actually stand into the anxiety. I call it perturbation, the provocation of the mind. And I'll repeat the word perturbation, perturb. Margaret, in a simpler way, Margaret Wheatley, the author of A Simpler Way and so much of the science of complexity, she said that we can't change a living system. All we can do is provoke it. We can perturb it, and then we can stand back and look at the response. So confront is actually making a choice to perturb your own system into growing and learning from something that gives you anxiety. So just a few final things here, and I'll open it up to questions. The leadership gift is your natural onboard empirical mindset. It's why so many people believe that it is the essence of agility. And my work today is mostly working in the people and interaction space with leaders in the enterprise in order to create a culture of responsibility that will suck lean and agile up into the culture. So the leadership gift is how I refer to all of the research around the responsibility process and the keys. Some metaphors that we can apply it to. Right? Above the line is growing, below is coping. Above the line is learning, defending is below the line. Above the line is change, below the line is resistance. All metaphors that we talk about at length in Agile and Scrum and Lean. Above the line is agile, below is stiff. Above the line is value. There was an organization where we did a culture change program with an 800-person IT organization, and at the end of it, I asked some of the senior managers what really changed, and they said what really changed is that we've eliminated tons of wasted thought and wasted action. And when you eliminate tons of wasted thought and wasted action, what do you have left? You have valuable thought and valuable action. So we could go on and on: happy, resigned, empowered, unempowered, free, burdened, etc. So that's the leadership gift. That's your Agile leadership gift. I call it the leadership gift for these reasons. Number one, we were all born with it. It was a gift that was given to you at birth. No one has a better one than you do. It's in all of our DNA. It's there for you to tap into and exercise if you choose to, or not exercise if you choose not to. Number two, every act of leadership, every act of self-organizing, every act of self-leadership taps into it. Number three, most people never know that they have this in them. This research has only been done in the last 25 years, and I'm the person most known around the world for speaking out about it. And my purpose in the world is to spread it around the world because, gosh, we need it beyond just Agile in business. We need it all through society and all through our kids and our teachers and all sorts of folks. And so now you know that you've got it and you know what you can do with it. So the question is, what will you do with yours? And on that, maybe it would be really good for me to stop here for a minute and see if there are questions. How do we do that, Michael? I think it was okay for me to allow people to speak up.
Great, thank you, Chris. Thanks for this great presentation. Very inspiring. And yeah, now it's up to you. Any questions from the audience? So just raise your hand. You have it in your panel.
Or comments. I would entertain comments as well. And if there are none, then I have just one or two more slides that I will close out with, Michael.
Well, there's currently no questions as far as I see in the panel. Well, I have a question actually from your experience. I mean, how would you go into an organization, let's say, I mean, into a larger organization? I mean, you know, we're talking about individuals, obviously. We're talking about individual behavior, teams, and the overall culture in organization. So where would you start actually, let's say, transforming the culture into something like, you know, behaving more in terms of leadership?
That's the million-dollar question. So thanks for asking it. I would start with me. So the most significant thing that I've seen when people first learn about this is that they see the responsibility process operating in people all around them more than they see it in themselves. And so I would say, number one, if you're thinking you can't wait for Jürgen and Stefan and others to end so that you can go home or call that person you dearly love and tell them you now know what's wrong with them, don't do it, because this only works when it's self-applied. So if I want to change the world around me, I'm going to start by changing myself. I'm going to start by getting some mastery of this myself. And what that means is I would get a copy of this poster. I would make a number of copies of it, put it where you will see it occasionally, find someone else who also wants to master this material and create a partnership with them to help each other. What happens is that when we get stuck in a place of blame or justify or shame, often we can't tell that we're in that state, so we don't know how to get out of it. So it's helpful if you have a partner that you can bounce things off of, and that's really much of what we do in the Leadership Gift Program and the Culture Change programs. Secondly, I would introduce it to your team after you have a few weeks or months of experience with it. I would introduce it to your team as a proposed operating agreement. And the agreement is this: are we willing to do our best to operate from a position of responsibility when things go wrong, knowing full well that things are going to go wrong all the time, and our minds are going to take us to the bottom of the chart, and we're going to have to crawl our way up to resourceful thinking. So that's kind of a long-stated agreement. But I would start a conversation with my team about adding operating from responsibility as a team agreement. And then that means an opportunity for you to teach this to your team. And when you go to my website and download the PDF of the poster, it has the teaching points on the back of it. And then to finally answer your question about how do we change a culture, Michael, I'm looking for the highest level sponsor, personal sponsor in any organization I can find, and get him or her to join us in a little mastery group of working to master this, and then ask them to bring it to their team and include more and more people. Does that address your question?
Yeah, that's great, Chris. That's obviously a complex topic. I would even say complex. There was one more question from Ralph. Just one question, Ralph. If you still have the question open, maybe you raise once again your hand, because otherwise we're quite late in time. So I would suggest to go further with the next presentation.
Sure. Well, let me just close off. I felt like I just had a few minutes left. So invitation to download, I told you a PDF of the poster is available. It's currently available in about 7 or 8 languages, and we'll be posting more languages soon. And you just go to ChristopherAvery.com to the Resources tab and look for either the Responsibility Process poster or the translations of the poster. And print all the copies you like of that and put them around everywhere. A teacher recently called me from a Dallas school district and told me she'd put up 150 copies around the campus. The second thing is, for those of you in Europe, I'm going to be there in April, in Vienna and Brussels and Oslo and also in Stockholm. And there's a couple of other dates in the U.S. coming up for the 3 workshops that I'm currently doing. And I invite you to take a look at those, and maybe I'll see you there. And with that, I think Jürgen, I love Jürgen's work, and I'm not sure I'm going to get a chance to stay and hear him. And is it Stefan? Stefan Perry. I love your topic because it's exactly what I'm talking about here, and that is that Agile and Lean are not about tools and processes and mechanics. They're about how we think. And so I want to hear that too, but I may not be online, so I'll be giving the recording. And with that, I thank you all, and I thank you, Katya and Michael and other developers of the ALEbathtub for inviting me to be here today.
So thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for your presentation and all your input. And I will now hand over actually to myself, or actually to Antti. Just one information for all. There were some questions now